There comes a time in life when the roles between parents and children start to shift. A time when everything you once knew about your relationship with your children begins to change. It's subtle at first. You don't see it coming. But one day you realize something is different. Your advice, once valued, is now ignored. Your opinions, once respected, are dismissed. And sometimes you feel like a burden. It hurts, doesn't it? When the very people you've spent decades raising, guiding, and sacrificing for start treating you with indifference. You want to remind them of all that you've done, all the years you've spent putting them first. But you also know that getting angry won't help. It never does. So what do you do when you find yourself in this situation? When your children stop listening, stop appreciating, and start treating you like an afterthought? Do you fight back? Do you argue, try to prove your worth? Or simply give in and let it go? The truth is, none of that works. Arguing or giving in only deepens the distance. But what if there's a way to regain their respect without fighting, without resentment, and without feeling like you're losing yourself in the process? Today, 6 powerful shifts, simple yet transformative changes in the way you respond, in the way you carry yourself, will completely change how your children see you. Not through word, but through actions, through the strength and grace with which you live your life. Stay until the end, and you'll discover how to not only regain their respect, but to transform your relationship with them in a way that makes you feel valued, appreciated, and truly loved. Ready to begin? Let's take that first step together. It's natural, isn't it? As parents, we pour so much of ourselves into our children. From the very first moments of their lives, we are there, guiding them, sacrificing for them, putting their needs before our own. We do this because we love them. We want to see them thrive. We want them to succeed. And perhaps most importantly, we want them to respect us. But there's a quiet, often unspoken truth. The more we chase their approval, the less likely we are to earn their respect. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever caught yourself saying yes when you wanted to say no? Maybe you've rearranged your entire day just to meet their needs, even when it meant putting your own feelings aside. You might have given in, even though it didn't sit right with you, simply to keep the peace. You told yourself, if I just keep doing this, if I just keep putting them first, they'll appreciate me more. But here's where things get tricky. The more you give in, the more you start teaching them that your feelings don't matter. And over time, it becomes easier for them to take you for granted. They don't see the sacrifices you make. They just see someone who is always there to bend to their will, someone who will do whatever it takes to make them happy. I remember a woman named Margaret. She was a strong, independent woman when she was younger. But as she got older, things began to change. Margaret began to let her children make all the decisions. She rearranged her schedule around them, kept her opinions to herself, and quietly accepted when they spoke down to her. I just want to keep the family together, she would say. But what happened? Her children stopped valuing her. They no longer saw her as someone with her own thoughts and needs. Instead, they saw her as someone who would always adjust, always agree, always stay silent. Margaret thought she was keeping the peace, but in reality, she was losing her voice. The lesson here is clear. Respect is not earned through self-sacrifice. It is earned through self-respect. When you start putting yourself first, when you stop constantly chasing their approval, something remarkable begins to happen. You start teaching them that your feelings matter. You teach them that you are not just there to fulfill their every need. You are a person in your own right, with your own desires, opinions, and boundaries. If you find yourself in a situation where you feel your children are taking you for granted, the first step isn't to demand respect. It's to stop acting like you need it. Set your boundaries. Say no when you need to. Speak your mind even if they don't like what you have to say. The moment you start respecting yourself, they will begin to see you differently. And over time, that respect will start coming back to you. By learning to stand your ground, to honor your own feelings, you'll find that the respect you seek doesn't have to be begged for. It will naturally be given. And as you begin to respect yourself, it's time to move forward, because the next step is about how you respond when things don't go your way. How do you handle disrespect when it comes your way? Let's dive into the next step. Don't argue, lead by example. We've all been there. Your child dismisses your advice, talks over you, or perhaps even mocks your concerns. In that moment, the urge to argue is strong. You want to remind them of all the years you've spent guiding them, all the sacrifices you've made, and most of all, how much you know. You feel as though if you just explain it better, they'll understand and respect you again. But here's the thing, arguing rarely works. Let's take a moment to think about it. When was the last time you convinced someone to respect you by getting into an argument with them? When was the last time raising your voice or listing all your past sacrifices led to more respect? In reality, arguments only heighten tensions. They put everyone on the defensive. And while you might feel like you've won the battle, you often lose the war, because respect isn't something that's won through words or through a fight. I remember a man named Frank, a retired teacher who spent his entire career confidently leading a classroom. But at home, things were different. His grown children had started treating him as an afterthought. They ignored his advice, laughed when he tried to correct them, and sometimes they didn't even listen when he spoke. At first, Frank tried to argue. He reminded them of everything he had done for them, all the years he had been their guide, their protector, and their teacher. But the more he fought, the worse things got. The tension between them grew, and the distance seemed to widen. Then one day, Frank made a shift. Instead of arguing, he started listening, really listening. He didn't try to prove he was right. He didn't try to win them over with his wisdom. He simply started carrying himself differently. He spoke calmly with quiet strength and stopped demanding their respect. He didn't need to, and something remarkable happened. His children, who had been dismissive, began to notice the change. They saw their father not as someone who needed to prove himself, but as a man who already was respected. Slowly, they started listening. They saw someone who carried himself with dignity, not out of desperation, but from a place of quiet confidence. The lesson here is simple. Respect isn't something you argue for, it's something you embody. When you stop trying to fight for respect, when you lead by example, you show your children what respect looks like. It's in the way you hold your head high. It's in the way you speak with confidence, even when they don't agree with you. It's in the way you carry yourself with grace, never lowering yourself to a level that doesn't serve you. By leading through action rather than words, you shift the dynamic. Instead of being caught up in an endless cycle of arguments, you become a person your children respect simply because you show them what respect truly means. So as you reflect on this, consider how you've been responding to disrespect. The next step is about something even more powerful: withdrawing your emotional dependence. Let's explore that now. As parents, we often invest so much of ourselves into our children. We give them our time, our energy, and our hearts. It's easy to see why we start to rely on them, not just for their company, but for our emotional fulfillment. After all, they are the people we've spent our lives nurturing. We want them to love us, to validate us, to make us feel needed. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The more you rely on your children for emotional support, the more you risk losing their respect. You see, when children sense that their parents are emotionally dependent on them, something shifts. Instead of feeling like they need to care for you, they begin to feel like they have to care for you, and that pressure can feel burdensome. Instead of being a parent to admire, you become someone they feel obligated to tend to. And before long, the relationship starts to shift from one of mutual respect to one of duty and obligation. I think about Helen, a woman I once knew who loved her children deeply. As they grew older and busier with their own lives, Helen found herself waiting by the phone, hoping for a call. When her children didn't call, she would reach out instead, often too often. She'd remind them of how much she missed them, how she wished they would visit more. She had so much love to give, but it started to feel one-sided. And what happened? Her children, instead of appreciating her love, began to see her calls as an obligation. They didn't look forward to talking to her anymore. They didn't look forward to visiting. Instead of feeling closer, they pulled away. They felt burdened, as if they were constantly expected to fill a void that they weren't equipped to fill. Then one day, Helen made a change. She stopped waiting. She stopped calling first. Instead, she began to focus on herself. She picked up new hobbies, started going out with friends, and took better care of her own happiness. Something surprising happened. Her children started calling more. They started respecting her time, seeing her as someone with a life of her own, not just as someone who needed their attention. The lesson is simple, yet profound. Emotional independence makes you more lovable, more respected. When you stop relying on your children for validation or affection, you give them the space to appreciate you, not out of obligation, but out of genuine love. You teach them that your happiness doesn't depend on them, and in turn, they begin to see you as a person who is strong, independent, and worthy of respect. By withdrawing your emotional dependence, you create a healthier, more balanced relationship with your children, one that is built on mutual admiration and care rather than obligation. Now, with this shift in mind, the next step is all about setting boundaries and protecting your well-being. Let's dive into that important action next. As parents, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that love means giving everything, sacrificing our time, energy, and even our sense of self to meet our children's needs. But here's the hard truth. If we don't set clear boundaries, our children will treat us exactly how we allow them to. Boundaries are not about creating distance or pushing our children away. Instead, they are about teaching respect, respect for ourselves and for them. Without boundaries, our time, our feelings, and even our presence can be taken for granted. And that's when we lose the respect we've worked so hard to earn. Take Robert, for example. He was a retired businessman, someone who had spent decades leading with confidence and discipline. But when it came to his adult children, Robert struggled. They interrupted him when he spoke, dismissed his concerns, and even criticized the way he lived his life. At first, Robert let it slide. He didn't want to create conflict, but over time, he realized something important. Every time he stayed silent, he was teaching his children that their behavior was acceptable. One day, Robert decided to make a change. When his son interrupted him, instead of letting it slide, he calmly said, "Please let me finish, and then we can talk." When his daughter dismissed his opinion, he responded with, "You don't have to agree with me, but I expect you to respect me." And when they continued to push his limits, he made it clear, "If you can't treat me with basic respect, I won't be spending time with you." At first, his children were taken aback. They didn't understand why their father was suddenly setting these boundaries. But over time, they began to see that he wasn't backing down. They realized that Robert valued himself enough to demand respect, and because of that, they began to give it to him. The lesson here is clear. If you don't set boundaries, your children won't set them for you. Boundaries teach others how to treat us. And when we enforce those boundaries with love and respect, we teach our children to respect us in return. It's important to remember that setting boundaries doesn't mean being harsh or cutting off your children. It simply means deciding what kind of behavior you will and won't accept, and standing firm when those boundaries are crossed. It's a way to protect your time, your feelings, and ultimately, your relationship with your children. Now, as you begin to set and enforce those boundaries, you might find that your generosity starts to feel more appreciated. This brings us to the next step. Stop giving without appreciation. Let's explore that next. As parents, we often dedicate so much of our lives to our children. They become the center of our world, the reason we wake up in the morning, and the reason we push through each day. But here's the truth. There comes a time when we need to shift our focus, not because we love our children any less, but because we need to nurture ourselves too. When our entire identity revolves around our children, they can start to see us as people without lives of our own. They begin to feel like they are responsible for filling the emptiness in our lives, and that's a heavy burden for anyone to bear, especially for children who are still learning how to take care of themselves. Take Elena, for example. Elena was a widow in her late 70s. After her husband passed away, she poured all her energy into her children's lives. She called them constantly, gave unsolicited advice, and tried to fill the void left by her husband's passing. But instead of drawing her children closer, she pushed them away. The more she clung to them for emotional support, the more distant they became. Their calls grew shorter, their visits became less frequent, and Elena began to feel lonelier than ever. Then one day, Elena made a choice. She decided to stop making her children the center of her world. She joined a book club. She began traveling with friends. She volunteered at a local community center. Elena started to build a life that was just for her. And something surprising happened. Her children began to reach out more. They started asking about her new activities, curious about what she was doing with her time. They saw her as a woman with her own purpose, her own joy, and her own fulfillment. They respected her more because she wasn't just waiting around for their attention. She had her own life, and that made her even more valuable in their eyes. The lesson here is profound. People respect those who have their own purpose, their own sense of joy, and their own fulfillment. When you build a life outside of your children, you show them that you are a person in your own right. You are not defined solely by your role as a parent. Instead, you are someone with passions, hobbies, and dreams, someone they can admire and respect for living a full, meaningful life. By cultivating your own interests and seeking out your own happiness, you not only enrich your own life, but also enrich the relationship you have with your children. They see you as more than just a parent. They see you as a whole person, someone who has something to offer beyond your role in their lives. Now that you've learned how to build a fulfilling life outside of your children, you're well on your way to regaining the respect you deserve. By implementing all 6 of these steps, stopping the chase for approval, leading by example, withdrawing emotional dependence, setting boundaries, giving with appreciation, and building your own life, you'll find that the respect you seek isn't something you have to demand,